States, I think we've invaded, 60, 70 different countries, most of them more than once. Although, last Sunday, Iran did fire some missiles against terrorist bases in East Syria in retaliation for Tehran attacks. So there's that. But it was in self-defense. You can't call that an invasion. They just shot at some people that they knew were terrorists. And just like we do, everybody's using Syria as their current battleground du jour. Yeah, but for the UN to name a Russian as head of counterterrorism, that ought to ruffle some feathers, especially with the United States. But, they needed to do something, I guess. The UN felt like they kind of got a black eye for having a Saudi Arabian representative on the Council for Women's Rights, one of the country's most egregious, villain when it comes to women's rights, and they're sitting on the Women's Rights Council of the United Nations. Hello. Anyway, that's old news. So recently, Russian fighter jets have intercepted 2 U.S. spy planes in separate incidents over the Baltic Sea. They're about to get into some dogfights. On the same day, as a matter of fact, it was 2 different U.S. spy planes were intercepted by Russian jets. There have been more than 30 interactions between U.S. Russian jets and ships in the Baltic Sea since the beginning of this month. Russian jets have been playing loose and hard in the air lately. I think they're mad because last Sunday, the U.S.-led coalition downed a Syrian government warplane in southern Syria. This is a blatant act of war. And amid many other acts of war, especially with regards to Syria, it makes me wonder, whatever happened to international law? It's like, are there no more law bodies out there? I remember they used to talk about the Hague and all that when Bush was committing these crimes. I don't know. Maybe it's just wishful thinking that there'll be some actual justice. So now it's time for the protest report. Friday, rallies were held across the world for International QUDS Day. It is also the last Friday of Ramadan. And they've been doing this International QUDS Day rallies ever since, the Ayatollah Khomeini came up with it. So it's been an annual thing. Millions of people. Calls for boycotting Israel remained the main theme of this year's demonstrations, a trend that has been promoted by pro-Palestinian activists for years as part of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. These anti-Israeli sentiments have risen among people across the world over Tel Aviv's discriminatory policies in the occupied territories and towards the besieged Gaza Strip. The occupied Palestinian territories have seen increased tensions ever since Israel introduced restrictions on the entry of Palestinian worshippers into the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem, Al-Quds, in August 2015. More than 300 Palestinians have lost their lives at the hands of Israeli forces since the beginning of October 2015. So this is the most recent round of things that people are mad about this whole situation of the invasion of Palestine, which actually started after World War II. Now, it seemed to me something else happened after World War II in The Hague and the various legal things that came as a result of that. They came up with all these international laws. And one of the most important of the international laws was it is making it illegal for any entity to obtain land through warfare. And then the invasion of Palestine occurred, and land was acquired through warfare, and it continues to this day. Israeli forces, each year, millions of people around the world stage rallies on this Al-Quds Day. Al-Quds is, of course, that's area of Palestine they want to have as their capital, Jerusalem. It's, whatever happened to the Holy Land? Does anybody remember that Palestine was called the Holy Land? Does anybody? I remember they talked about a Holy Land, and And now it's a huge embarrassment in that these group of people have taken over and they're building all these settlements, they call them, on the blood and bones of people that had lived there and for thousands of years. And it's home to the world's largest concentration camps, an outdoor concentration camp called the Gaza Strip. Moving right along. So every year they repeat their call to the end of Tel Aviv regime's atrocities and its occupation of the Palestinian territories. More about that later. Wednesday was International Yoga Day. It was in the Indian city of Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad, 125,000 led by celebrity yoga guru Baba Ramdev gathered in an open-air ground to try to set a new Guinness World Record for the largest session of yoga. I don't know if they achieved it. I mean, how would they even know? Because yoga's been going on. It's like the largest, could have happened anytime in the last 5,000 years. Yoga's going on. So I personally, Marz Theron, your host, decided to do some yoga that day in honor of International Yoga Day. And let me just tell you this. I'm a little bit out of shape, but yep, I recommend it. It's a great way to stretch out your chakras and get your blood flowing, and it'll cure what ails you. What else would cure what's ails? Do you have a student loan holding you down? Well, dear listener, I'm just all over the place. You need to get a program to follow me. Well, don't feel alone with that loan. Some 5,000 students took to the streets of Santiago, Chile on Wednesday to protest the high costs of university education that have left many with crippling debts. This is just one of many protests since President Michelle Bachelet reneged on her campaign promises of free university education. She promised free education. But she claims that the fall in international copper prices made it impossible to pull off. Well, I know the feeling, Michelle. My penny collection has been a major disappointment to me as well. I tell you, been saving up them pennies and hoping I can pay for college education. Ain't gonna happen. So, yeah, there's the people protesting a lot of different things. Also on Wednesday, more than 5,000 people participated in the funeral of 17-year-old Nabra Hassanen in Sterling, Virginia. She was beaten to death after leaving Ramadan services. Not really a protest per se, but some people were carrying signs saying that Muslim people need to be protected. I mean, it's like this was an isolated incident. Some idiot came up and beat her to death with a baseball bat. But it brought 5,000 people out in Sterling, Virginia. You know, it's a tragedy, one of many, many, many tragedies. Meanwhile, in London's Downing Street, on Wednesday, 3 protests were held to coincide with the formal unveiling of the government's legislative agenda, called the Queen's Speech. I don't think that was the Queen giving a speech, but you know what I'm saying. They called it the Queen's Speech. Included as a day of rage, demonstration to bring down the government and respond to the Grenfell Tower fire, chanting, "Tory government guilty of murder," and "Hey, hey, ho, ho, Theresa May has got to go." I guess Theresa May was acting like a queen, so they thought that the Queen's Speech moniker was appropriate. No one party has a majority, though, over there. It's crazy. Their elections are like in limbo, but they all appear to agree on one thing: Brexit. They want to Brexit, British exit from the European Union. George Soros spoke out. He wrote an article on it. He said he hopes that she'll be able to delay the Brexit. For him, of course, because pulling British money away from the EU will mean a lose-lose proposition for his investments. So, yeah, the British money is a big issue for the people who want to maintain the European Union. Lucifer's spawn, Georgie Soros. He looks like he's pulling Teresa's strings, you know, just like he pulls Hillary's here. Who'd have thought he was such a ladies' man? I guess It's kind of an ogre of a person, but, you do what you can to keep the ladies happy. So he backs their play. Meanwhile, the Western support for the mercenary armies invading Syria is becoming more and more in our faces, ladies and gentlemen. The Wall Street Journal, I don't like to read the Wall Street Journal, but they actually reported that an Israeli journalist admitted that Israel has been providing Takfiri terrorists in Syria's Golan Heights with a steady flow of funds, weaponry, and medical supplies as part of their involvement in the conflict. A spokesman for the mercenaries says, Israel stood by our side in a heroic way. We wouldn't have survived without Israel's assistance. It pretty much tells you all you really need to know about that, don't it, boys and girls? Who's backing who and who created what? There was this one time not that long ago where a Scud or something accidentally flew into Israeli area, and these mercenaries apologized profusely to their brothers in Israel. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't the Israelis and just Muslims in general allegedly not friends or partners? Oh, well, they are when they're fighting to help Israel expand their territories. One commander of the mercenaries said he claimed that he receives about $5,000 a month from Israel, as well as truckloads of Israeli-made weaponry. They got good Uzis. At least 4 other allied militant groups also receive Israeli aid. These are just the things that grind my gears. I just thought I'd share them with you, laddies and germs. As I was mentioning last week, they had the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War. And that's when the Golan Heights of Syria was grabbed by Israel during the 6 Days War 50 years ago. And in the 6 days they expanded, if you will. They exploded and just started attacking in all directions. The Israelis did. And they started grabbing up large areas of land. And they went into Syria, of all places, and grabbed a section of Syria called the Golan Heights, and they're keeping it. I believe that Netanyahu has spoken to Trump about helping him keep this Golan Heights that they stole 50 years ago. They have no right to it, but they think it's theirs. Apparently there's an awful lot of oil there. I believe, is it Soros? Somebody has a major interest, if you will, in the oil coming up out of the ground over there. So, yeah, they don't want to give it back. And they use that area as a base for training and equipping the variously named mercenary armies that have been created by the Mossad, the CIA, MI6, and all the other alphabet agencies you can find in that area. Their latest attempt to expand across the Middle East went into high gear in March of 2011. What's interesting that even UN observers in Golan Heights, they report repeated friendly exchanges of personnel and supplies between the Israelis and the mercenaries that are trying to take down Syria. And the wounded mercenaries, they get treated in Israeli hospitals. Coincidence? I think not. They even have these MASH-type camps close to the battlefields. You know, MASH, the TV show, right? The movie, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. Yeah, they got Israeli mobile army surgical hospitals right next to the battlefields over there so that they can help their mercenaries and to get back on their feet. Documents from Israeli hospitals have shown that Israel has spent millions of dollars for the treatment of their hired militants injured in fighting with Syrian government forces. When they have recuperated, they get sent back to Syria to try to unseat the legitimate elected government of Bashar Assad. So, you know, this is something that our press in the United States doesn't talk about much, but the rest of the world knows it.